And with AI coming up, are you doing anything with AI to stay ahead of that curve?
From a hotelier's point of view, when you buy 10 kilos of beef patties, you basically want to know when at the end of the month your chef says, well, I've got 2 left. You want to know, well, did I really sell the 8? AI can totally do all of that stuff for you.
What operational pain points are you seeing during most when you start implementing the change?
Integrations are a big one.
Welcome back to Raw AI Solutions, the podcast where we explore how business leaders are navigating the fast-moving world of AI and digital transformation. I'm your host, Denise Powell, and today we are joined by James Peach, co-founder and CEO of Benson Software. James, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Denise. Pleasure to be here.
James, would you like to start telling the audience just a little bit about yourself and your organization?
I'm a hotelier by trade, so I also own a hotel. On an IT side, the main business of hoteling essentially is taking people's reservations, looking after deposits, and making sure that you get them to pay their bill at the end of the stay. So I ran into we had a server-based system that used to do it. The housekeeper, used to go past with a Hoover and knock the cable out the back, and the whole system would shut down. I'm going back a good decade now, but it was a very antiquated system. The hotel industry is not, or wasn't anyway, particularly well served by software. If you remember in the old days, there were those old sort of blue screens with the yellow boxes. It looked like an abomination. And it was difficult to use. And as I say, then someone would come and knock the cable out of the computer, and then the whole system would shut down. So I just knew that there was a better system out there. At the time, I met a gentleman who, because I'm not a coder myself, but who has a business involved in the motor industry. So he is a techie, for want of a better word, but he knows coding and understands all of that. And the two of us teamed up together, and I said, well, I know what hoteliers want. I know how hotels run. You know how to code. Let's build a great hotel software system. So Benson Software it's a terrible acronym, I'm afraid, but it's PMS, which stands for Property Management System. And that's what we do. We are effectively like an IT system for a hotel. So it manages the operations of a hotel. That's what PMSs are. We're obviously a cloud-based system. At the time, there weren't many. There are a few more now, but that's essentially what we do. So our clients are hoteliers, and we run their hotels for them, or at least the revenue side of their hotels. We don't get involved in expenses or anything like that, but we make sure that they're billing and all of people are paying their bills, and all of that stuff is happening properly.
That's very interesting. So tell me, with all AI coming on board and every day there's a new product out there, are you noticing any trends that have changed over the last year?
To be honest with you, the industry is a little bit behind. We're not at the forefront in the hotel industry of leading the IT sector. There's definitely things in there that could be done better. Airlines have got quite well onto this, where they've managed to automate pretty much all of their systems, all of their reservations, all of their sort of income side, ticketing, all of that kind of thing. Hotels are still coming along fairly slowly. It's a little bit more complicated, in a funny way, than it is in an airline, because airlines is now a relatively simple business in that they have effectively said, well, pretty much everybody will buy an airline ticket direct from the airline, so they're closed off a lot of the old ways. When in the old days, you used to go to an airline and sit in a sort of like being in a shop, effectively in the front of a shop, and you said, I want to go to Thailand on holiday, and then they quoted you, and it was quite a cumbersome process. Now nobody does that. Everybody just goes tuck into the computer. You might use a searching company or one of those kind of grouping, price grouping companies to look for the best thing, but basically you're buying it directly. The hotel industry is still very fragmented, so people are dealing with hotels. Often there's a bit more to it. The hotel is in, I don't know, somewhere in the Lake District, and you've got to think, well, can I just get a train and walk there? No, actually, you've got to hire a car or whatever, they can often be a little bit more complicated. So the sales process is slower because people then want to engage with the hotel. How do I get there? What can I do? Blah, 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 blah. Um, but it is slowly moving forward. Definitely more can be done. Travel agents still have a role because, you know, my hotel is actually in South Africa. And we deal a lot, for example, with the safari industry in South Africa. Now, you can't walk to a game lodge because you'll get eaten by a lion. It's as simple as that. You're walking through the bush like the Kruger or Botswana or somewhere. So often in those kind of sales journeys require a lot more handling. I know how to fly from London to Johannesburg or New York to Johannesburg because that's easy. I can figure that stuff out myself. But how do I get from there to a safari lodge? Same thing would apply in Iceland. How do I get from Reykjavik to whatever fancy lodge? So they need a bit more handling, and AI has a role in that, but inevitably it still probably requires a bit of human, or it'll be a long time before AI can then say, you wake up and you say, well, I feel like going to the beach. So, and the AI can then spit something back that says to you, well, actually, there's a great trip to Thailand, which gives you a couple of nights in Bangkok and a couple of nights at Koh Samui, and we can book all of your internal flights and get you from Koh Samui to your airport to your beach lodge and backward. There's quite a lot of logistics there that inevitably need a human. Maybe AI can do that in the future. I don't know, but it'll be a while before it gets there.
And with AI coming up, are you doing anything with AI to stay ahead of that curve?
Not funnily enough that much in our property management business. On the hotelier side, there is actually quite a lot that you can automate. So when you see companies like Xero, for example, the accounting software company, hotels, obviously, like every other business, are big purchasers. They're purchasing tons of stuff, beers and cokes and hamburger patties and all sorts of stuff coming through, boring stuff, basically. But Xero are now bringing in AI where you can sort of scan your purchase from your liquor store or your butchery into Xero, and it's starting to be a bit more smart. Then we can just pick it up. It knows that, I don't know, ABC Butcher is a cost of sale item for meat, for example, and it can start to assign that stuff. So people, I would say, for example, people like accountants, which should be perhaps a little bit concerned about it, if you like, because those kind of roles can be supplanted by AI. And from a hotelier's point of view, when you buy 10 kilos of beef patties, you basically want to know when at the end of the month your chef says, well, I've got 2 left. You want to know, well, did I really sell the 8? AI can totally do all of that stuff for you. It can go and count the number of sales of hamburgers and think, well, each one's 150 grams. So, so many hamburgers equals 7 kilos. You're missing half a kilo. Is that reasonable? Well, yes, because food is food, and some burgers are bigger than other burgers, so that's reasonable or not. AI can automate all of that kind of stock management. So I think from a hotelier's perspective, that kind of stuff will really change, and there's huge opportunities there. I've got people in my hotel who are spending ages inputting invoices, blinking broccoli, and they're inputting the thing. All of that stuff is manual stuff, and that could definitely be done. On the software side of it, there is some work that we can do in AI. Our tagline, if you like, for our business is about intelligent hoteling. So we are trying to enable hoteliers to basically be getting on with the important stuff in a hotel, which is getting in front of your clients and making sure they have a nice stay. You're staying with me, Denise. What I want to do is make sure that you're having a nice stay. You come and tell me that the lamp bulb beside your bed is broken. That, as a hotelier, is what I should be focusing on. I shouldn't really need to worry about whether you've paid your bill or not. So, in other words, in our system, it's pretty intuitive. It's very easy to see who owes you what, when, and where. You can't check out of any hotel on our system or a user can't check you out unless you paid the bill. But hang on a minute, raw AI actually is now a corporate client of the hotel, and they've agreed, you know what, we'll take all of Denise's bills and all of, you know, the whole team's bills. So now you build that into the system. You say, okay, so all raw AI clients coming through the hotel, well, those ones, they can be checked out, or the, you know, and the billing can go back to raw AI. So you can kind of automate that stuff, and that's what we call in our software business intelligent hoteling. So you're trying to let hoteliers do the important stuff, sucking up to clients, fixing problems, you know, looking and noticing that Denise has been for the fourth time in a month. Okay, hang on, maybe there's a corporate client that you can give a good corporate rate to. Maybe she's got colleagues who stay down the road at the Holiday Inn. Let's get a rate, match it, bring them in. That's what hoteliers should be doing, not faffing around, wondering about bills or chasing payments or any of that kind of stuff. So there is some of that stuff that can creep into our industry.
And so with the software that you're doing, obviously data and analytics that comes out of that is pretty important. So how are you finding that shift in terms of data and data storage, especially if it's software that's, I'm assuming it's a global software available globally?
Yeah, yes, it is, absolutely. Data storage, I mean, we already work with payment companies, because obviously in the hotel space you're taking payments and things. So there are requirements that we have to meet, more simply because we're handling payments, and those kind of things that mean we have to be adhering to very tight security and all of that kind of thing. So the storage is pretty easy. The analytics is interesting. So, you know, you can start to dissect in your hotel, well, who are your clients, what countries are they coming from, and those kind of decisions can then drive, well, you know, maybe I should be doing a Google AdWords campaign in America, because lots of Americans are Googling, you know, hotel whatever Coventry, or whatever it is, or boutique hotel Coventry, let's say. So let's go and target them. So with our software, we are trying to allow hoteliers to get the data out that they would find useful, but then it's up to them to do something useful with it. You know, they can dissect nationalities, they can dissect what rate types. Very topical in the hotel industry is they're called OTAs, online travel agents. They're very useful. Booking.com, Expedia are probably the brands you know most of. We hoteliers don't like them, obviously, because we have to pay them commission, usual story. But they provide an important role in the travel industry. But, you know, the game is always about, well, hang on a minute, how can we divert that business to our website? So obviously the best booking, if you were booking with us, the best booking you can give a hotelier is you book on their website, because there's no middleman in the process. The hotel gets effectively the full amount of money. The travel industry is a very heavily commissioned industry. We pay big commissions easily into the 20, 30, 40% commissions to travel agents, online, these OTAs, corporate travel agents. The hoteliers are always very keen to try and get a booking get direct contact with you, so that they can then obviously give you a discount, because you say, well, there's no point, I'll go to booking.com otherwise, but convert your business to becoming a direct client of the hotel. So all of that game is what hoteliers are up to. We try and provide them with that information, so that they can act on it. So, you know, they see, well, hang on a minute, you know, raw AI have had 20 bookings this month with a, you know, guest with an email address, rawai.com. Well, you don't need to be a data scientist to then think, hang on a minute, there's something in there. So we want to make sure that that information comes. You may never have said, well, I want a corporate rate. No one's ever thought about it. But as a hotelier, you want to be spotting that kind of stuff. And that's how you could be clever. You can start to use that data cleverly and try and grow your business.
Yeah, and being proactive. And I think that keeps customers loyal and faithful, for sure.
It does, absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
So out of curiosity, so I know a lot of times I would go directly to bookings.com, because their prices generally come out cheaper than if you go directly to the hotel. Why would that be?
Oh, now you've touched a raw nerve. So
Sorry.
a hotel will publish a rate to booking.com, say £100 a night for argument's sake. There used to be a rule about rate parity, so everybody had to offer the same price, and no one was allowed to undercut everybody else. Generally, the European Court of Human Rights actually threw that one out. I'm going back about 5-7 years ago, something like that, and said no, that's rubbish, because hoteliers were complaining and saying, well, I've just signed a contract with Booking.com, for example, and that contract says I'm not allowed to undercut them, and they are allowed to undercut me, but I'm not allowed to undercut them. That's surely unfair. So that was what the European Court of Human Rights said. No, that's rubbish. That's got to go. So say Booking.com take, I'm hypothesizing, but I don't know, it's probably between 15 to 20% commission, maybe more, but let's say between that. So what they will do is they'll say, hang on a minute, Denise, so one of the ways they get you is they'll say, well, become a member of Booking.com. So you literally, if you go to a lot of these websites now, they'll say, sign up for membership. Even the car hire companies do it now. Actually, if you go to Avis, sign up for membership, you get a straight 10% off. So it's not like airlines where, you have to be a elite status silver flyer who spent millions of pounds on travel. You can get straight to tier one just by putting in your email address and filling in your details. Boom, thank you. There's a discount. So that's one of the ways they do it. So they'll immediately discount you. So if you now look at hotel websites, like if you ever go to Hilton or any of those big hotel groups, they'll also say, sign up, you get 10% off straight away just for filling in your email address. So that's one of the ways they do it. And the other way they will do it is they're allowed to, of that 20% commission, they might say, hang on a minute, I'll actually forego a little bit of that commission. So I'll only take, let's say the commission is 20%, I'll only take 10% commission. I'll offer 10% to Denise, because when you're searching for ABC Hotel, you'll see Booking.com suddenly will undercut the hotel, and so they just take it out of their commission, and they're allowed to do that. So it's a game, basically, because obviously in their eyes, well, 10% of Denise's booking is better than 0% of Denise's booking. So let's forego a little bit of commission and do that. And they're allowed to do that. So it is basically a game. The airlines, if you remember, as I go back to the old thing, you used to go to a travel agent and book your airline. The airline industry, but remember, there are a lot less airlines. Basically, I don't know whether they got together, so to speak, but the airlines basically said, stuff this business of commissions. We are just going to say everybody books direct and we don't really care. So they cut down the commissions massively. They do, I think, pay some commissions to some travel agents. But the majority of airline travel is booked either through these big aggregators like Kayak and those kind of things. But the commissions that those guys are taking, I think, are points of percents, not in the old days of 10 for whatever percent it was. And now most people book an airline direct. Or if you go to a travel agent, sometimes a travel agent will actually say, well, I'll do the dog work for you, but I'm going to charge you £25 for doing it on top of the price. So the commission now is sitting on top of the price. They're not going to the airline and saying, hang on a minute, BA, actually we want 25 quid for giving you Denise's booking, because the airline said it. We'll stuff this. We're not operating in that model. Hotels, it's a lot easier for an airline to do it because there are, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 maybe in the UK, whatever. How many hotels are there in the UK? Well, yikes, must be 10,000 or something like that. So there's never going to be that kind of system. So travel agents, OTAs carry a lot more weight in the industry. They can go to all 10,000 of those hotels and say, well, if you don't want my business, stuff you. I've got 9,999 hotels out there who do want it. So sad, sorry for you, basically. I think the industry is changing. Hoteliers obviously are trying to get people to book direct as much as they can, but it's changing a lot slower than the airline industry did. So the airline industry changed pretty quickly, actually, in the space of probably a decade or so. People just stopped going into your travel agent or phoning a travel agent or whatever, and they just did everything online. It coincided with the rise of the internet. It's happening in the hotel industry, but slower.
So coming back to the software, so if a company wants Benson Software, do you go and install it for their company?
So now you come to the challenges that we face. We think we have a great product. If I use the analogy, you have a horse and cart and I come and show you a motor car, you think, oh, that looks so wonderful. So the sales process always goes very smoothly. But then all of a sudden, it is quite a hoo-ha to move systems, IT systems. Um, going back to the horse and cart thing, you suddenly think, oh, hang on a minute, but how do I have a stable? How do I put this new thing in the stable? What is this petrol thing? How does this work? Blah blah blah. So, we think, I believe we have a really good product. A lot of the times when we're pitching to business, we're against these old legacy systems. You see how, someone says, well, we'll say, how do I make a reservation? Oh, you have to go here and you click that thing, and then sometimes it works, and you have to wait for that thing to work, and then we go to that page, and you think, oh my god, how did such a complicated system even exist? But moving between IT systems is very challenging. In the hotel industry, well, let me go to another part of our industry, so the restaurant industry. So moving in the restaurant industry, software systems actually very easy, because every night, basically, unless someone runs out the door, everybody's paid you. So you don't carry any debtors from day one to day two. You might have some stock management software that you use, but basically, if you just woke up tomorrow and started to put in a new point of sale in your restaurant, it's relatively easy to do. Bit of hoo-ha, but it's relatively easy. In the hotel industry, you've got people staying over, you've got bills that are running, you've got deposits for future stays, next year's deposits, you've got reservations with details in them, and so on. You've got debtors, people who owe you money from the past. There's a lot more sort of dynamics. So moving systems is a pain. There is no easy way to do it. And importing data out of one system into another is also a massive pain. No old or previous software supplier is willingly going to say, yeah, sure, here, have my data, move to a fancier product. They'll make it as difficult as possible. So it's a tricky tricky thing, basically. I mean, every industry faces the same challenges where, moving between software systems is just a painful process.
Well, in today's podcast, we were discussing the 6 biggest challenges of facing business leaders as they lead IT change. So if that's the one, and I absolutely agree with you, that is definitely what a lot of clients are telling me as well. So that's nothing out of the ordinary there. What would you say some of the other challenges are that the software industry faces?
I think inertia is one of them. People will look at something and think, oh, that's great. But unless there's actually a willingness to do it, and unless we find if the instruction doesn't come from on high, nobody particularly wants to put their hand up and say, I did it. I mean, the very topical point in the UK about that whole IT change that was done for the NHS that cost £10 billion or whatever it was. The person who put their hand up and said, oh, this is a good idea, that person's going to be feeling pretty sore. In companies, unless the big boss says we are moving systems, often people, I will say you want to move, but hang on a minute, if it all goes pear-shaped, it's coming back to me. Everyone's coming back to me to say, well, how much money was spent on this project? And you suggested that my career is tickets in that company, so to speak. So we find that, we work with a lot of small independent hotels, so they can be easier to do because often you can get in front of the owner of the hotel or a very senior person, show them, and then they can say, right, this looks good, let's go. But anybody, when you're dealing with reservations managers, a sort of middle management position, people are often quite reticent to put their hand up and say, ooh, I'll take the can. Obviously, in business, business is about being challenged. It's about challenging and developing and growing and things like that. So if you don't put your hand up, you're never going to grow. But anyway, that's one of the big ones that we find in our industry. I'm sure all software businesses in particular find a similar thing.
Oh, completely. And it's the change in adoption, because if the change is not going to be adopted, you may as well not have done it in the first place. What are you finding? Because you focus on streamlining operations for professional service firms, well, hotels and that. What operational pain points are you seeing during most when you start implementing the change?
Integrations are a big one. So hotels obviously, we work on the revenue side of hotels, but you've got restaurants. We don't do restaurant software. We took a decision in our business to become experts at the particular niche that we do, but not to do everything. So there are some PMSs that will do, do a restaurant as well, for example. There is part of our industry is called channel managing. There are companies out there that do what's called channel managing. Essentially, they sit between a hotel and a booking.com, and they feed data between the two. The rationale being that booking.com don't want to talk to the 100,000 hotels across the world, because it's, if they do a change, they can't phone 100,000 hotels and say, okay, all of you lot have got to go and change your system. They'll just deal with one person or a number of companies. So it's like an intermediary, if you want. Those kind of integrations are vital for hotels. As a hotelier, you want to know, you want your 6 free rooms or 60 free rooms tonight out in the market to be sold, because no one's going to sell them if they're not, just displaying as available. So those kind of things are vital. So integrations are key. They're constantly changing. They're constantly growing. The other day, a lot of our hotels have spas now. All of a sudden, they want to be able to sit in the spa, have a massage, and they effectively want you to walk out the front to go, tuck, tuck, tuck. Oh, Denise, yes, you're in room 3. Boom, and now it goes onto your hotel bill, because when you go to the front of the hotel, you don't want them scrabbling around, here's a bill from the spa, here's a bill from the restaurant, here's your hotel room. No, that must be one unified bill. So, as I say, integrations are key. So we've decided to partner with the best business in every industry. I like Xero. I think they're the great accounting software. So we partner with Xero. We integrate with Xero so we can feed data in. Payments are another big part of our industry, obviously, because like airlines, we want to be paid for our hotel rooms. We want to know. The key for hoteliers, we want to know, well, when Denise books a room, we need you to show up. So, if you don't show up, I might have turned away 100 other people for that room. So we need to collect a deposit. We need to have cancellation conditions that we know that you've met. And so we need to make sure that we get paid. Sometimes we might tokenize a card, so not actually take the payment, but to sort of hold it against your arrival, and we'll take up a deposit. But all of those kind of integrations are vital. So they're a big challenge for hoteliers and a big challenge for us at Benson Software, because that market's always moving all the time. There's new stuff coming. In Xero suddenly say, well, actually, we've rewritten our integration process, and they give you zero warning as well, excuse the pun. So one day you just wake up and all the hotels phone you and say, oh, your integration doesn't work. And then you're like, oh, well, they didn't tell us. But anyway, and so those are very challenging aspects of our industry. But everybody, I'm sure, has a similar kind of, where anybody in the software industry would be able to sympathize, I'm sure.
Yeah, integrations, it's a huge one. When you're implementing, do you find that leaner companies handle change more effectively than larger ones? Or is it just that they face different kinds of challenges?
It really depends, is the answer. Funnily enough, some of our bigger clients, we work in this, our hotels are normally independently owned. It might be a hotelier who owns 3 or 4 properties, but we wouldn't do a big business like Holiday Inn or something like that. So some of our larger hotels, let me step back for a second. A hotel requires a number of people to make our software work. You have a reservationist who needs to know how to make reservations. You have someone at front desk who needs to know how to check you in, give you the bill at the end of the stay, that kind of thing. There might even be people involved in rates. So they're just checking that the hotel's rates are all like an airline. It's very important that our rates are always fluid. Hotels, when using our software, you can price according to occupancy, exactly like an airline. So when you buy an airline ticket, airline does 2 things. It looks at how far away is the flight and how booked is the flight now. And using those 2 things, so they can give you a price. We do the same thing in a hotel. And you can apply various bits of logic which say, well, actually Denise is booking for next year, so we'll give her a discount because she's booking miles in advance. Or we might do a reverse logic and say, actually, we're going to charge Denise a fortune because she's planning her holiday so far in advance that we're just going to charge her full price. But actually, if she booked tonight, she'll get a whopping discount. So the logic can work in both ways. But all of that kind of stuff is very important in hoteling. So bigger hotels will have all of those people in place. A smaller hotel won't. So sometimes when we go into a smaller hotel, they'll phone us and say, "Ooh, how do we do this pricing thing?" So they know what their room is. Say the room's £100 a night. But now they think, well, hang on a minute, but if I sold it tonight for 50 quid, because I want to, hotels have what's called an expiring inventory. In other words, if you don't sell it tonight, it's gone. I didn't sell my Apple iPhone, I was an Apple store today. Well, it doesn't really kill me. I mean, it's a little bit of a pain to pay the staff, but I could still sell it to someone potentially tomorrow. So hoteling, you've got this expiring inventory problem, which is the game you play. So now, do I discount my room to 50 quid tonight because I really want someone to book it? But then, hang on a minute, now I'm undermining my brand a bit here. I'm pushing the message out into the market that says, we'll never book at this hotel until the last minute because you'll always get the room at half price. So you've got all of those kind of dynamics to do. We find in our business that, particularly with smaller hotels, we're having to educate operators in exactly this logic. So whereas a bigger operator, they'll know all about this stuff. They'll have been involved in this for years. So, and those are, from a business perspective, those clients obviously paying us less because we charge based on the size of the hotel, because that's based on the size of the data running through our system and all of that kind of stuff. So we can end up in a situation where Denise, who owns a 100-bedroom hotel, is a dream client. She just knows what she's doing. Her staff know what they're doing. She's been there before. She worked with a competitor system. She's off. She just runs Benson. She loves it. But James, who owns a 10-bedroom hotel, is now phoning Benson every 2 minutes. How do I check people in and out? How do I do rates? I've heard of this thing called booking.com. How do I do it? And he's costing 10 times the support time, and I'm getting a tenth of what I get from Denise. So we can end up in those kind of scenarios where it's like 100-fold difference in business. And to phone James and say, well, listen, we're not charging you enough because, you should know all this kind of stuff. Don't phone us about booking.com. Use Google or phone booking.com. I don't know. So you've got all of those kind of dynamics in play. And so we can find that our clients could sit on either end of that spectrum. I mean, we have once had a client who pretty much said to us, your system is broken. And we pretty much had to say to them, please look down on the floor. Is the plug turned on your computer? No, it's not. Well, we're a software as a service system. It's not going to work if you don't turn your blinking plug on. It wasn't quite as bad as that, but it basically was along those kind of lines. Those kind of support queries, chomping up your support time, can be very frustrating as a software provider. Anyway, and that also is where AI can kind of help you. So, a lot of software companies now will challenge you to find a phone number where you can talk to a human. Like Zero is actually a great example. You cannot phone them. There is no phone number anywhere on any site, on any of their partner portals, anywhere in the world that you can phone, or that I've ever found anyway, as a user, because they don't want these questions. How do I link my bank account? All this kind of tedious stuff. They just direct you constantly into help sites. You can log a case in a help site and you'll get a response like, I don't know, 6 hours later or something like that. But those kind of businesses have obviously got the gravitas, and they figured out they're fed up with having people phoning them every 5 minutes. So they actually said, well, stuff this, we're going to put it all online or do more with AI. You can type in, your system doesn't work and it can spit back an answer. So, well, please, number one, check the power supply. Does your computer work? No. Well, there's your problem, etc., etc. I'm over exaggerating, but those companies have figured out that they will get rid of most of those questions. That way, we're a much smaller company, so we're not at that level yet. So that's one of the challenges that we face as a business.
So what sets Benson Software apart from the rest of the other hotelier software that's out there?
Our system is intuitive, basically. Hotels get students, for example, a lot of hotel school grads. If you want to get a degree in hoteling, you need to go and do, for like 3 years, I think you have to do like 6-month practicals in hotels. With our system, we can plop a student in front of our system. In 5 minutes, they will be running. They will just know what to do. It is so intuitive. And that in our industry is massively important. As I say, quite a few of our properties are in Southern Africa, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Namibia, those kind of countries. You've got a much lower level of IT literacy in those countries than you do certainly in Europe or North America. Again, you can put someone in front of the system. It's really intuitive. It's easy to use. So that's one of our big USPs. We like to think that one of our other USPs is that we allow a really in-depth data analysis, if you like. So we don't allow a hotelier to really understand their business, who's coming in, what rates are they coming on, and therefore, as I say, to try and then start to be smart with their own business. Have you noticed that rawai.com or various users using that domain address are booking? Oh my goodness, there's an opportunity as a hotelier. There's something in that you can process. Maybe Raw AI opened up an office down the road from you, then you can go and get a corporate sale out of it, that kind of thing. So we like to think that at Benson, hoteliers can get that data easily out of our system. What they do with it obviously is up to them, but we'll provide easy access to that data so that they can use it. And that's what you want if you want to be cutthroat, or not even cutthroat, but just rise above the rest and use data properly.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you. Well, if we have to look ahead, Benson Software, where would you like to take that next 6 to 12 months?
I always want to do more in the AI automation space. So we really work on trying to do two things actually. Firstly, is to keep partnering with the best kind of partners out there. We're always looking for new point of sale partners. There's a lot of ancillary software that could be added on to the hotel industry. So we're always working with finding new integrations and new partners. And secondly, just enabling the correct or the best use of the data in our system. The reservation process can be quite a complicated process, especially maybe not with a city hotel, but with a hotel out in the countryside. There may be, various steps that they require you to go for. So for example, Denise books, but when you book, you're required to pay a deposit. And then maybe you have to pay the balance 30 days before your stay, for example. So you want to try and take that burden off a hotelier and to automate that as much as possible so the hotelier doesn't have to stress and think, okay, well, who now in my 30-day prepayment cycle, who do I need to go and target and get? Well, maybe Benson can actually just keep banging on Denise's door and saying, hey, listen, you booked your stay, the second, the final payment is due, please pay, and do all of that kind of stuff for you so that the hotelier doesn't have to stress about it. We call it reservation health. But as I say, hoteling is about, you want to sell your room to someone and then you want that person to pitch up. So, airlines have it a bit easier because they don't really care whether you pitch up because they got your money anyway and they don't really mind. Often hotels don't take all your money. So it's important to them because that you pitch up, because if you don't, they may have turned away 20 other people for that room. Now, all of a sudden, they don't get the money out of Denise because she didn't pitch up. And the other 20 people, well, they've long gone because they've gone to your competitors because you were full and you sit with an empty room that night. Disaster for a hotelier. We want to do whatever we can to automate that and make that as good as possible. So we call it reservation health because we want the hotel to be full of people who want to come and who are really going to come. And that's how we can help hoteliers, if you like. If we could take that burden off a hotelier, then, as I say, the hotelier can get on with the important stuff, which is making sure that their guests are happy, that the cockroaches are not there, the staff aren't stealing the beers. On a more positive atmosphere, they must be into their rooms and deciding, oh, well, those rooms need to be upgraded. Those kind of business decisions. They're not stressing about the kind of operations of the hotel, if you like. So our job is to make that as seamless as possible.
And so right now, what challenges are you facing that's prohibiting you from making that a lot more automated?
Just finding the time to do it, basically. Our clients, when I set the business up with my business partner, I would never have thought that, well, I mean, we've been going for a decade now, over a decade actually. I would never have thought that we'd still be getting requests from hoteliers.
James, thank you so much. It's been amazing to have you on board. If listeners would like to know more about Benson Software or connect with James, all the details will be beneath in the description. James, thank you so much. It's been really insightful, and thank you for sharing that with us.